Hello. Monetization off. There we go. Good morning. I am ready to get my giants on. Oh, yeah. Good morning. I hope you have slept well. I hope you are ready to chill out and craft. Yeah, Luna? Did you want out? You want to go? Alright. The cat has escaped the room. Back on track. So what do we got? Cameras. There we go. Yeah, I've been writing a lot. This whole page is dedicated to Mayan culture. There's a little bit of contrast to Aztec. If you didn't know yet, the dragon and dragonborn culture in Aida, my world, is heavily inspired by Mayan. So I want to get that right, especially because of certain family members that I have. All right. Where's my crafting? Oh, my crafting book's out there. All right, so we have the Jotun dungeon tiles. They're coming along every day. I do another piece. And they're not perfect. Like, my corners are definitely not perfect little cuts. And I'm okay with that. That being said, I could definitely do a nicer one right there. I think I can like fine tune my corners once everything is glued together. Why is this bubbly? Oh, the edge is glued, but the center did not. That's fascinating. I was not expecting that. That's got a little bubble to it. Yeah, we got some tiles coming along. We got one corner piece. And let's see. This. A giant's dungeon. Literally a dungeon made for and by giants. Yeah, this doesn't look great. It has the classic D&D tile look where you have your squares, but it's not every inch, and that's really cool. It really gives the upscaled effect. But we have a bunch of pieces to go through. Then we can get cut up. And we'll start working on that right away. But first, I do... Yeah, okay. I wanted to double check the plan. So we'll spend a few minutes working on some of these, especially this one. And then I want to talk about the pillars. Of the blade to bevel the edges. Ooh, is this a dull? Yeah, I think it's dull at this point. Yeah, I'll grab a new blade. I want to get the microphone to aim at the phone to get that nice satisfying sound for you guys. There we go. Good morning, Kobe. Ooh, fun fact, Kobe. I have a possible brainstorming update on floating islands. I figure I might have a way to expand the idea accurately for the world building. Oh, did I not cut? first step you're supposed to do. Curious how off this is going to look. Oh, not bad. Easy. We can get a better angle for you. Well, that's a little bit better. Easier for me. How's it for you? They are technically from the same piece of foam. So we started with 1 centimeter, right? And then I sliced off the top so that way I can bevel the edges and get this nice little bit like layered stone effect, and then I glue it back on. So that way, when they come together, they have this like enlarged dungeon tile effect to them. And they look like giant slabs of stone laid down by the giants who built the dungeon. Once they're painted, they'll have this look to them. And you can see when we start dry brushing the edges, they really get a nice layered look to them. Put some darkness into the crevices. Close to my chest. So my brainstorming for the floating island project, which is right back there. Where's my finger? Right up there. Digging into the lore of Aida, how would flying islands get made? Because they're not natural like in the movie Avatar. Someone's gotta make them. Well, there are about 2 to 3 possibilities how they could exist in Aida. First one, if you could skip the cutting them apart and gluing them back together, yeah, you would speed up the process a lot, but you're absolutely right. You're cutting and you're just chipping away at that point. You're sculpting. Whereas cutting them off, you're just working on one piece at a time at that point. One possibility of floating islands is inside volcanoes, where a giant dungeon, for fire giants, they would have made something to exist in or above the lava. And I think that's really cool because dwarves would have access to it, orcs would have access to it, and it'd be a very rare, like, cool big boss battle sequence. Or a whole town, city. And when we think about the cities, we kind of actually take a step away from floating islands, and we go to the cloud cities. The cloud cities are built in the Jinn skies. Was it Jinn skies or Jinn clouds? Can't remember, but high in the altitude, cities made of clouds. These were originally built by the giants. They have very much been like, hey James, good morning. They're no longer the giants. They've been reconstructed and rebuilt by the Air Jinn. And a lot of Air Jinn live in the clouds. And the way to think about that culture... Oh, I need to download this video. There we go. Failed to download. Thanks. If you've ever been in an airplane, if you look out the window, my favorite thing to do is look at clouds. And what I love to do is perceive clouds as land masses, and all the empty air below leading to the ground is a sea of oxygen. And I imagine Air Jinn riding clouds, running across the lands of clouds. So one idea for floating islands for a dungeon set is literally clouds. Get some cotton balls, get some clear acrylic, and find a way to have something that's kind of off the ground, maybe a couple inches, and we just have clouds forming the islands, the floating islands that the players can play on. And if there's room in the design, line it all with little LEDs that like can represent like lightning in the clouds. So those are two possible continuations of the Floating Island project, where it's levitating in a volcano. So a volcano or in a storm where it's chained to the ground. So it's not, so it doesn't escape. It's meant to be a hovering place. And that would happen with some giant dungeons, very rare ones, where they didn't want the fortress to escape, so they latched it down to a mountain. You're supposed to eat the glue on your left hand, right? Oh, really? Oh, I've been doing it wrong this whole time. This one's just a little too clean for me. Thanks, Kobe. I don't know what I would do without you. That white pole behind me that's holding up that light. That sucker is slowly falling down. Specifically on that side. That side I got it pretty secure. I keep hearing it move. After this piece, we're going to look at we'll do a corner, and then we'll look at the Jotun pillar that I've been experimenting with. Tad bit delayed on the crafting camera, so it looks like you're just mimicking cutting to a pre-recorded sound. Well, the sound is not technically coming from the crafting camera, but I can reset it to just see what we can get. There we go. Whiplash. Brickmaster. So yeah, those two ways the floating islands can exist in Aida. There's Jotun dungeons that are chained to interesting places, like inside a volcano at the top of a mountain. Or actual clouds. Or under the sea. It's like foam Oreos. Almost. And having them like under the sea or in volcanoes or something like that, I think allows floating islands to be a more common dungeon that can happen. They can be old giant dungeons taken over by a different monster. Become a dragon's lair at some point. Very adaptable. Versus only being in the sky, like clouds. But clouds, having a set made of clouds is actually, I think, more visually interesting than what you would expect. The only other place I can think of is in, like, the Astral Sea. But I feel like I can make one set of floating island and it will be reusable for all those things. There we go. Got another corner piece. All right, where's my trash? And it'd be really fun for the dungeon that the floating island set is to fit within the 2-foot circle parameters of the Lazy Susan and have multiple rotating sections on them. Could I motorize it? If I dive into learning more electronics, sure. Otherwise I would have to crank it, and I think it'd be way more fun if it was motorized. Alright, so let's talk pillars. In the Discord, morning Sean, look how tall this pillar is. You have the best ankle. So, this is what we're working with right now for the pillar. The nail is currently a placeholder. What I would like to put there is, for the final piece, a glue stick, basically. And then in here, have a RGB LED that is like, I can switch with a little basic remote, something from Amazon. And then this pillar can switch between reds, blues, teals, greens, and it can fit the type of giant elemental powers that are in the dungeon. Or they can be turned off and they're just sitting there. And when they activate, something can happen. A lot of possibilities. But I want to explore more of the design that needs to happen here. Because this is currently just a plain old box. And this is a little bland. So you could use transparent acrylic rod. You could, absolutely. But it doesn't need to be that long. Only an inch. That was weird. First step, So having the slab-like effect is definitely a nice touch. And probably add a piece to have it bulge out just a little bit. Yeah, that'll be nice. What does it look like when I start beveling some edges? In general, way better. So, back of the blade. Yeah. I like that. Groove piece will look nice. What if it should be here or it should just be straight on the line? Oh, that's pretty satisfying. I see some issues I'm having. There we go. Dig deeper for this trench. Obviously, this trenching would be way easier if I had multiple slabs with the hot wire cutter. But I really just want to get a look at the possibilities here. basic side to that. I think this it kind of matches what's going on here, right? You know what's possible? If the idea is to have an acrylic or a glue stick, right, run up here just for the LED at the base to light up the bottom, what if I actually open this up, cut it in half, separate it just enough for the acrylic piece to go all the way up, and then the whole thing glows. Then the pattern or the design that happens here is actually the hollowed light coming out versus more patterns on the side. Let's grab a spare piece of foam. I can just see the shape. Yeah, the more I can occasionally integrate RGB LEDs into like these bigger dungeon pieces, honestly the better. So that way, you know, because we're only going to be having 3 color sets. So this can have its eerie colors with the RGB, but really it's these guys that matter. Because I want to use this for the forest, not just the desert. Same thing with this. I want to use this for the forest, the volcano, the frost, right? So an RGB hidden in this colored set can make it more adaptable. And then we don't need as many pieces. Because that was a big flaw in the early dungeon tiles on this channel for the streams, was a new dungeon tile set for every terrain, and it's just exhausting. So the more we can make a single tile set be adaptable visually to multiple terrain, the better. Maybe. This is a maybe that I'm looking at right now. It's not bad. Reminds me of the pillars in Mass Effect. Here, let's look that up. Because I think I remember that, but I want to try to remember better. Us old guards still expect you to finish that set. Truth. Those are cool pillars. Idea. Okay. Oh, thank you, man. All right, so. Right. So, if this was going to be the acrylic, right? Get the nail out. It's a little big. Yeah, so like a centimeter rather than a full inch. Okay. And then we have this nice, very like Forerunner-esque thing going on here. I'm trying to get the perspective right. So we'd think something like this. And then the LEDs. And I would just make a top to cover it. And the front and the back don't need a side stone like that. Which part of my audio? Voice. Got it. How about 1, 2, 3? I do have the mic not facing me. Ta-da! Are we still able to hear the tig-a-tacks? The scratches? So I find that satisfying for you guys. So yeah, having this with a cap, I don't think it needs a back. I think it would look cool if I did give it a back. That would force all the light forward in a dungeon. So if we are saying this tile would, this piece would be in the same dungeon as these. Oh my gosh, these little pieces of foam. Right? And we have this guy chilling right here on the edge. If we cover the top and cover the back, only light would come out here, and then omnidirectional down at the bottom. Yeah, I'm okay with that. Hades, welcome. Hades, was it you who, I don't want to use that knows or is studying Mayan culture? Yeah, I think this would be a sick pillar. Okay. So this is the direction for the pillars. How many pillars do I need? Realistically, right? Obviously, it'd be cool to have so many. We need at least 2 per set. So that's 6 pillars. Let's just go with that. 2 per set. I think that's totally fine. Because I can fake it with 2, saying like put 1 here, 1 here, and I can say that's the hallway. You have the same thing on the other side. Or I can put 1 on each side of a room. Yeah, 2 pillars per set. 6 pillars. That's not overwhelming. All right. So for this prototype, I want to get a piece of foam just to glue right here. It has been. You're very correct, Sean. Keep it simple. And we can just glue that on. Mayan, Aztec, and how do you pronounce, is it Incas? The other day I was like looking at it, I was like, how's my brain not remembering how to pronounce it? There we go. Because the last couple days I've been deep diving in Mayan, because Mayan kind of monolithic, but the same way I'm doing for elves is merging Greek and Roman together for elves. For draconic culture, I'm kind of slapping a bit together of Mayan, Aztec, and Inca. But to do so correctly, there's a lot of breathing in that focus. I'm trying to learn a bit of the differences, the big differences, right? So that way, what I merge is conscious. A great example is, where's my book? Yeah, the big 3. Obviously, there are more down below, right? Mayans had 9-month years, which was the cycle of just having birth. We are all just YouTube or Google search away from knowing all we want about ancient cultures. This is true. but it takes time to digest it, time to adapt it, and you want to rabbit hole yourself as much as you can, which is not just a Google search. Let's see. No metals. They use obsidian, which works for dragons. Polka, which is really funny to have a sport that's invented by draconians that everyone enjoys. Big differences: Mayan and Aztec. Mayan were independent city-state. Aztecs were an empire. And the types of sacrifices they did were different. Those are the two big different points that I have so far. Gold is not a currency, which, because it says here for me that they use cocoa beans as their primary form of trade, and there was actually counterfeits of clay seeds or ceramic seeds. This is literally me doing light research. I really like that gold is not a currency to draconians and dragons because it's a treasure. It means something more than just something to spend on. Yeah. That was a little bit of a deep dive that I did to like get my brain brewing on dragons. There is a D&D monster. Let's see if I can bring it up. The Coatl. In D&D, it is a celestial serpent with rainbow color wings. Well, the Coatl, it comes from, to my understanding, Mesoamerican culture as kind of like a serpent god. So, one of my thoughts is, I went on, they don't sell it for WizKids, but for a mini, I was thinking about my golden dragons being serpents, which I really like, but I even like them more so if they're inspired by the Coatl. So golden dragon with feathered wings, and I find that really captivating. I just recently learned about Aztec death whistles. Oh, dude. If you go to, I got something for you, Sean. If you go to, make sure the website's correct before I said it. Yeah, boomlibrary.com. A lot of the sound effects that I've used in Son of a Dungeon, Fables D20, Fables of Refuge, across the board in all my projects, I have primarily used Boom Library as like the go-to sound effects library. Very expensive. I only have a few of the libraries. And the only reason I got them is working with Corridor Digital, splitting the costs with me and Sam, trying to make the sound effects for Son of a Dungeon right. And I was able to, because I spent money on them, use them for Fables. One of the products, the point being, they have some free sound effects in there. If I go to all products, scroll down, let it load. You're gonna love this, Sean. For free, they have the death whistle. I'm 100% about to play it on the stream. They're gonna have some like music in the background of it or whatever to make sure it's you can't just steal it. But it is literally them playing around with the death whistle. It's 0.7 gigs. It's 33 files, 179 versions of the sound for the death whistle. It's completely free. Just what a treat. Let's see if I play it. Hopefully it's not too loud. It's kind of like the demo mix. So you can get some I haven't opened the folder, but you could probably find some that are mixed to sound really cool and echoey, and then some that are just the raw recordings. That's boomlibrary.com. Enjoy the death whistle. I think it's inspired by the... Yeah, it's the... I can't pronounce the first part. Is it Quetzal? Quetzalcoatl? 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 A god from different Mesoamerican cultures, but it's mostly known from Aztec. Yeah, so the mini that I found. So in Aida. Oh, we'll talk some dragon stuff right now. Even though this is giants, it's fine. I have different color scale dragons. I don't follow the whole alignment thing necessarily. I rather have I like the different colors, meaning different types of energy of dragons, and I want those energies to represent what typically their alignment would be. Because in Aida, alignment is just a little bit different because Celestial and Fiend play a very different role than your typical, like, evil and good stuff. Yeah. This is safe to share. Okay. Let me bring up the screen. It's the wrong screen, guys. I didn't know I was sharing that screen. There we go. There's nothing bad about that screen. So I've been looking up foam rollers, so that way I can add details and textures. Here's a nice little dragon statue. A couple more that I can mess around with. This is for some serpents, slightly different. It's the spirit Set. We'll get into Set and Thoth another day. So this would be a bronze dragon, and this would be a gold dragon. So rollers. This roller has the ability to give me some amazing details and textures for when I start doing the dungeon tiles for dragon dungeons. Here's some tile tops. So this would be a bronze dragon. Bronze dragons are ocean dragons. They're for salt water. So I like having a couple serpent dragons to get a little bit more of the Eastern Asian dragon vibe and aesthetic into the world. Start with the aesthetic, build the culture through it. And in Curse of Amity Island, we have a bronze dragon, and I used the big old WizKids bronze dragon inspired by D&D's monsters. But I really like this idea. But when we get to river dragons, gold dragons or river dragons, I love this. So I can think of the body being gold, right? The scales, and then the feathers are of the coatl, the greens, the blues, essentially all the rainbows. I really love that. But yeah. I need to type something super quick. Yeah. Yeah, I've just been on a couple days of a binge of Mayan and Aztec, trying to get my head primed for dragons. I think the third slab looks nice. Yeah, that's gonna look nice once it's painted. Okay, so we have this nice little gap going down here. So what I'm thinking is I can probably just cut them in pieces and have a little piece of foam just connecting the two. So that way it's way easier to construct. This would actually just be the LED. Put a slab of stone on the back here maybe keep the top open so light would just shoot upward. No, this is great. But the base, now we need to explore with what's going on in the base. What should be going on here? Should it be angled? So it'd look. That's a bit of a complicated cut, but I've never done that cut, so be worth practicing. Give it a shot. I'll bring you guys out to the hot wire cutter and we can kind of do some angled cuts. So with a 10-degree cut, that will be good. Let's do 5. 10 might just be taking too big of a bite. Good morning, Sneaky. Ideally, it doesn't actually cut the bottom. I just realized my microphone's in here, not out there. Okay, so the plan is to do a 5-degree angled cut. In case you didn't hear me, good morning, Sneaky. Because I think the microphone was set differently. All right, 5-degree isn't bad. I don't know if it's right. I think it's just a little too subtle. But let's do it on each side. So that way we can cut deeper if we want. Let's just one more pass, clean off the edge. Very subtle. Poing. So I feel like the 5-degree cut is too subtle. Where's my square? There. So let's go for a full 10-degree. What is it? Good multitasking, making dungeon pieces and recording the music theme at the same time. I mean, what you're hearing is not the theme for the dungeon, but yes, I have Ivan working on the music at the same time. I like this more. 10 degrees feels a little bit more right. Okay, so fix this bit. Do I have one of those lights still? I might not. I'm shaking the camera. All right, let's move back inside. Gotta go back to work. Good crafting. Thank you, Sean. You have a good day at work. Okay. I used to have these LEDs. I'm trying to remember how big they were. Oh. There we go. They had to be about an inch, maybe a little bit larger, so that can get carved out. And the LED can pop out this side. So we want to be careful with how much design goes into this base, because it can't ruin the actual infrastructure. Well, what I want to get is some jigs, some templates on the hot wire cutter so I can make cleaner cuts at different angles and different shapes. Other tools I'm going to be using, the knife, the pencil, the nail, and of course, everyone's favorite and Kobe's personal favorite snack, the glue. I think when we look at this thing, oh, that came out real nice. Oh, that shaping is very nice. Especially if it's going to be essentially hovering. How high is it going to hover? This is way too tall. About a centimeter. still looks a bit popsicle, but for giants. I mean, yeah. What if it goes this way? No, that doesn't look right. Woo. Oh my goodness. I'm pushing the not dry glue to its limits. I think that will look fine. Especially when we start getting texture in there, that's gonna look really nice. About the big three. Oh, my microphone. The big three. Look up some books in English for and send you the info. Thank you. The giants are basically Stone Age, right? Yeah, I mean, Stone Age in the sense of we have Stone Age, ancient Egypt. Like, look what they were able to do with, obviously, slavery, stone tools. But we were also admitting that the giants were arcane users, right? They're the founders of arcane. They molded this stuff not just with stones and slavery, but with their own hands. And then these Jotunheims, these dungeons, are conduits of raw ancient magic. The people who come after, because you might be thinking Neolithic Stone Age. Neolithic Stone Age would be before Age of Thunder, before the giants. That would be the Primordial Age. In the Age of Thunder is really when we're getting fortresses of arcane powers. We're getting floating fortresses made of clouds. And hi.
Being bossy, I can only assume she wants in her office.
Of course. And after the Age of Thunder comes the Age of Wrath.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my, Luna.
Once she realized, she ran so fast.
The door has been closed this entire time.
Because I had class, and so we didn't want to compete audio-wise.
And now that Luna realized that my door was open, she came running in because she loves hanging out in my room.
Yeah. Well, it's her room, not yours.
It's her room, not mine. That's right.
She also doesn't like when she doesn't know where both the cats don't like when they don't know where their humans are.
Right. I would say the dragon dungeons, very fragile. But yeah.
Is that a tower?
It's just a pillar.
Oh, okay.
The idea is to have an LED in the bottom and like acrylic here to catch the light. And so this will actually glow with magic. Age of Wrath is when the dragons essentially destroy everything. The war between the dragons and the giants. So the draconian dungeons, the Mesoamerican inspired culture comes around the same time as this.
Is it the boy now? The
Big
boy
boy
came in here? You're scared. You don't want to be on camera.
But in the Age of Thunder, these guys are ruling because they have a technological advancement.
Oh, it's like, is your face even on camera?
It is. I'm in the corner. Where's the
Look, you're on camera.
Oh, is this just
Oh, are you camera shy? You hate being on camera.
Are you camera shy, big boy?
He hates. He knows something. He doesn't like it. We gotta go get breakfast.
So, after the Age of Wrath, where dragons and giants nearly destroy the world, we get the Age of Starlight, where the Jin dynasty really starts to take a massive lead for the first time. And we also start seeing the elves come in, and that's more Roman, ancient Rome, ancient Greek technology advancements, which is less focused with magic at the core and more of the development of material technology. And, at the same time pursuing knowledge of the arcane. So yeah, maybe Stone Age is not the right term, because their stone is Jotun stone. It's a mix of iron, cement, meteorite. They used their elemental powers to pull what they needed out of the earth to make what they wanted. And then they had the slaves of Jin and the technically slaves of Orc, the creatures that they made. So it is this weird hybrid of Stone Age and arcane magic. And it ends up having this like ruin version of sci-fi vibes. It's really hard to describe that. I haven't been successful at it. Closer to our Bronze Age. In a timeline, yeah, late ancient Egypt. So it would be closer to the Bronze Age, where the Iron Age is about to happen, where we would associate that to Rome. But for Aida, just mixing up the materials a bit, is that they kind of skip that bronze and they go straight to iron. And they make this weird custom iron. And then for the Elven culture during the Age of Moonlight, they actually don't use iron because iron hurts Fae, and that's where the elves evolved from. And they actually just use mithril as their primary source of metal. In Aida, mithril, with a Y, not an I, is a moon silver. Yeah. So in development, in relationship to our world, this would be the Bronze Age. Just swapping out bronze for Jotun stone. There we go. Did the dragons make their own species or races? So, no. So the dragons evolved from, just like the giants and most monsters, evolved from the death of Jin, because Jin are inherently magical and connected to the world. As they passed away without ceremony, many of the elemental powers came together to create new creatures like dragons and giants, and over hundreds of thousands of years, enough evolution and magic has come together that we start getting real dragons, right? The giants, the Olympians specifically. Noelle, good morning. They experimented with themselves, creating the orcs. They're the half giants. Then they experimented making goblins. They mixed goblins with orcs to get bugbear. They mixed fae with orc to create furbolg. And they kept on going. To make the orc in the first place, they had to mix themselves with djinn, and just they're mad scientists during this era. It's like we discovered this arcane power, and so we are creating everything possible with it. They eventually started stealing dragon eggs and dragon hatchlings, and experimented on them and created the first draconians, which is what kind of led to the Age of Wrath, is those draconians fleeing to their dragons. I don't want to say overlords because it's not true, but they fled to the dragons. And Age of Wrath was a genocidal crusade from the dragons against the giants, led by a sociopath. Okay, so it's a crusade that went further than it needed to. And so yeah, the draconians, we got dragonborn and kobolds, were made by the experiments of the giants during this era. But they don't really recognize themselves as orc. They don't recognize themselves as elemental. They recognize themselves as dragons and draconian. So their culture is slightly behind. This time during the Age of Wrath, the draconian culture is slightly behind Jotun in a technological sense. And they're made by those who flee from the Jotuns. Yeah. Hope that answered the question. Alright, so how do we decorate this? I like the idea of putting some lines. Maybe one at the bottom, so there's a tall top. Of course, Hades. Okay, for me to get this line looking right, I'm gonna try the hot wire cutter, because it just looks disgusting. How did you start getting into world building? Like, are there textbooks you use to better hone your craft, or just going along with what as it comes? I have a paint smudge on my monitor right where the chat is. There we go. outside and I'll answer the question there. You can't come outside. You crazy little kitty. Oh, the too thin strip line over the big chunker. So how did I get into world building? It kind of started with one of my first D&D games ever, where, just confirming, you can hear me, right? I did move the mic. Great. The world building started originally on my earliest game DMing. One of my players knew more about the Forgotten Realms than I did, and it had an impact on me that I wasn't able to actually build something, or not build's the wrong word, prep something of any substance or surprise. Very careful. There we go. There, nice clean thick one to look at. And then one day, while we're on an adventure, they asked a question like, how old is this tower? Where's the tower from? I didn't have the answer. And I really didn't like the fact that I didn't know the answer. So this should line up. And I started world building from there. I started with asking a question. What are the answers I want to give to my players? And a lot of those answers came from the idea of history. Where did the dungeon come from? Where did the tower come from? Right? Who was here before? Missed it. There we go. Go from there. There we go. I know I'm kind of speaking slowly because I'm focusing on this. So here's the double line effect, or here's the chonkin line. So I started with that question: where did the dungeon come from? And I was like, who made the dungeon? From there, I asked, okay, who could make the dungeons? Because this is all me starting from D&D. So I'm locked into D&D monsters because that's what I have at the time. From there, I was like, oh, an Age of Giants is cool. an age of dragons is cool. An age of elementals is cool. Like, I'm just setting up myself for, like, which one, what are these times and eras sound cool to? And I forget when. I think it was very early on, so early COVID, I decided, I was like, I don't want other realms, other places, because then what's the point of the material world, right? Is it just the real, is it Earth, and then we just go off to these fantasy places? That makes it feel more Narnia than it does Lord of the Rings to me. So I said, no giant realm, there's a giant time. No dragon world, there's a dragon time. And that was like, that's how it kind of started, as like Age of Thunder. That's the time of giants. Age of Wrath, the time of dragons. Age of Moonlight, that is the elves. And then I made some other ones that I didn't really know what was going to happen, but I was like, how do we get from here to there, from there to there, right? I was like, let's put another age to represent kind of a bridge. And I'll figure those out when I get to them. Because the current era, Second Dawn, has to be somewhat just medieval fantasy. And that's even evolved since fleshing out the Jotun dungeons and the Jotun fortresses, fleshing out the Roman aspect of elves, fleshing out, as little as I have, the Mesoamerican inspirations for dragons, which is a ripple effect in my mind. And I'm trying my best to like hold the canon together. But I established just these little bits of things. And then we played Curse of Amity Island, which different players played different races, different players asked different questions, and that led to me having to come up with answers, not just floating around in my head, but they have to exist. Then we played more games, and it just gets more fleshed out the more questions and the more choices players make. Eventually to a point where now it's a pretty locked in setting, and it's just about filling out the details. Not a lot of the episodes have been released. I think my friend Chris and I have recorded 5 episodes total, and only 2 have been released, maybe 3, of the Lore podcast on the channel, where he and I sit down, and yeah, we did 3 episodes that are released so far. I have like 2 or 3 more sitting on the hard drive. Once I finish a client, I can have more time so I can work on it. Him wanting to do the podcast and asking me questions about the lore really helped me lock things in, because I had to have answers. So the first episode of the Lore podcast, we talk about dwarves. For the most part, that podcast is still accurate. For example, the red dwarves came from the union of orcs and djinn eventually down the line during the Age of Moonlight. And that created the dwarves. And the dwarves created the sun to end the age of dark sky, which was destroying the moons. And that's how we got First Dawn. And then we have Second Dawn, where the elves don't exist anymore. Who was here before and why? What happened that left this place in ruins? What disaster could destroy almost everything? that isn't a war among the gods. What did mortals do themselves? Yeah. And in many ways, removing the pantheon is a kind of a late thing that there are different faiths in the world. The first faith is still the current faith, which is based off Shintoism, where every object has a spirit. Every object has a soul. And then there are great spirits, which we can think of as great deities, like ancient dragons, ancient giants. And during their time, they were considered pantheons, right? Like, to a draconian, an ancient great dragon of fire is a god. To an orc who was created by an ancient Olympian giant, the giants are gods. They created them. And that led to the creation of divine magic. But as the gods, the dragons and the giants, battled, they were defeated. And they went away. And the idea is like, what is left? What do we believe in? The Jinn are still around, and they introduced or reintroduced their original faith, because they were made of everything. They were made of the earth, made of the fire, water, air, and they believed that all things around them have spirits, have souls, are worth something, worth respect. And that became the dominant faith. So in Aida, that's where like the celestial and fiend monster category get a little watery, a little mud up, is Fae are spirits. They are celestial. Are they fiends? To a degree, yes. And so what makes something a celestial or a fiend is more of its temperament, more of its persona. And it's just stacking over time, answering questions, and just starting from a point of like, I don't want to do what something someone else is doing, like Wizards of the Coast. I wanted something to be a little bit more unique, so that way I could tell a different story of the world, of a world, where, because for a long time, a big problem I had with Wizards of the Coast D&D is, and to most D&D like games, even Shadowdark, is the idea that there are angels and devils, right? And it's a little too Christian and Catholic for me. The wind's just blowing some pieces around. So getting into spirits is a really important aspect of the world. The way I like to say it is, when you think of deities and gods, you think of them as above. Gods look down on us, right? Spirits are things that are among us. They're in the trees, they're in the rocks, they're in the sea, they take up the mountain, they take up the rock that's sitting on the mountain. There's the forest spirit, there's the spirit of the tree in the forest. And so there is a hierarchy of spirits, absolutely. And that's how you can kind of get to Archfey and unlock that in the world building and the storytelling. But gods, they created things and they destroyed everything. And then it was just left up to the mortals and the magical people to keep chugging along. So are we saying we like this double line more? I know it's a little messy, but we like the double line more than we like the big chonker? Because this might be simple enough. to be what it needs to be. So yeah, no textbooks on world building. I have watched a few YouTube videos to hear what other people kind of... Oh yeah, the double line actually kind of mirrors what's going on right here. That's kind of nice. Ooh. I've watched YouTube videos on people's world building. A lot of world building videos that I see out there have a lot to do with literature and writing a book. And I can only take like 5-10% from that. Hey, Sam. Whereas like some world building videos that have to do with like biomes, forests, deserts, and how to like lay those out, I take a lot from. Yeah. And then, you know, when it comes to like elves being part of Roman, dragons being Mesoamerican, giants being whatever giants are, this sci-fi stone, it's really about tying it to the present in the eras and doing the research of like, what were the Romans like? What were their architecture? What were their sciences? What did they pursue? And then take that, look at the world building. What were they doing in the world? Tie that into that. And just tethering back and forth a bit. Yeah, this does look nice. Keeping this plain might be okay, as if it's like just a honking piece of rock. What's another thing that I learned from world building? Oh, because an important part of world building that videos about like writing a new world for a book do not help you with is the player experience. Players don't want to play in a book. They want to play a game. So it takes a lot of work to make sure your world is compatible to gameplay. And even Brandon Sanderson talks about this. There are some worlds that are compatible for gameplay and some that aren't. And for them to make the Cosmere into a playable world actually took more work than what it normally takes from him. And that's why it took an entire team to make that work. What was the thought? World building. Time, answering questions, asking questions. You know, 70% same, 30% different, or 80% same, 20% different, whatever it is. Midroll, how are you doing? I have another question. What are your thoughts on the hero's journey or the Dan Harmon story circle? Do you prep little nuggets of character development or improvise as they go? I do. I actively try to practice my prep with like if I could design a new dungeon or a new adventure, like a small adventure, I actively lay it out like the hero's journey. A lot of prep in the hopes that to some degree my memory and the player's experience, it can come back to that. So it's like you did experience some form of the hero's journey, or the Dan Harmon circle. You experience a little bit of it, so you as a player can walk away and go, wow, that was a nice story. There was the ordinary, the magical, the midpoint, the mentor, magical item, temptation. There was the darkest moment, and then the return. You could feel that. So I do prep that. And when I think about the whole adventure as a whole, it's like, I can't figure out the details, but I know that, like, okay, at a certain point we're done with the ordinary world, and we really have to get to the magical. And once we get to the magical, I can get more in detail what's going on there. And then ideally the resolution is after this big boss thing, and we can figure out what that is in the moment. And then we just, when we sit down to play, it's improvise all the way. So, cut chunks out of this. I'm off to a shoot. Enjoy. Hey, Sam, thank you for stopping by. Connecting pieces between the base and the top looks a little thin to me. By thin, do you mean that gap? Because this is going to be acrylic. Great, how are you today? I'm doing well. I'm getting hungry, though. I've been up for 3 hours. And we carved a bunch of tiles today. Talked a bit about lore and world building. And kind of just prototyping this giant pillar. Trying to feel out what is this going to look like. Take a big chunk out right here. Yeah. Come over, I just made dinner. You know what? Maybe this third piece is too much. Yeah, this might be too much for, or if it's just if it's even thinner, that might be okay. But it's getting, technically visually it's saying that it's getting fatter the taller we get, which we don't want. But I think this is a nice prototype design for the pillar. We got the double line, we got a double indent in there. We got a slab of stone. We'll have a slab of stone up here. We'll take this piece off. Just like that. Yeah, that looks nicer. And then we'll have an LED inside here shooting up an acrylic piece. Either a glue stick or a harder form of acrylic. And then through here, we'll actually have different color LEDs. Or the light from the LED will emit across that, and that can help the pieces be more diverse for different elements and different terrain. and then they can fall over. What does it look like when it falls over? I could make some slab pieces just to lay on the ground as broken pillars. That'd be fun. As long as it doesn't take too much time. There we go. This was super helpful. I'm off to teach and proctor a midterm. I know they're not ready for. No, you have a wonderful day. There we go. So yeah, giants. We got this entire pile to turn into this. All this into that. And then we have to make 6 of these. We'll start with at least 3, 1 for each version of the dungeons. And then if we feel like we need to make a second one per dungeon, then we'll do that. 1 piece at a time. As Sean has said in the past, my ambition can be my downfall. All right. Well, I've been streaming for a couple hours. We put together a few of these. It's great. Every single day I'm making at least 1 more. On stream I make like 5 more. We put a lot of effort into prototyping this pillar. I'm really happy about that. And we talked dragons and dragon culture. And we talked a little bit about the possibilities of where the floating island project is going to go. Having a floating island terrain system that can be inside a volcano, chained to the top of a mountain, buried under the sea, just like in Curse of Amity Island, or no island at all, and we actually just make terrain out of acrylic platforms and cotton balls so that we were battling in the clouds. All this does belong to the giants at this time, so it's not a leap, and we'll get to those in the near future. Let's see. My lights pole in the background is falling apart. It's kind of falling off the wall, so I can't grab the floating island because the floating island is actually holding together my light. Yeah, I gotta fix that. But I want to show you the floating island, the original model. So you can see that my microphone needs to swap. All right, so you can see how my light situation's getting all turned up. But we have an acrylic base that goes up into this platform. And to make the small pieces floating off of it is essentially just a wire. And this works great. It's a big honking piece of foam, which is arguably its own issue based off the design. But this set the precedent of what to expect. It's a solid prototype, honestly. And I really love the amount of work and color and everything that went into it. I love that in the corner of the screen, you guys watch just my back, just like ah. I'm still mute. All right. What was I saying? Guys, thank you so much for hanging out. Consider hitting the like button if you want to get notified when I go live on Thursdays and Sundays mornings. Discord is the best place to be. I don't really trust YouTube's notification system, but you can also just subscribe on YouTube if that's what you want. Thank you so much for hanging out. I'm hungry. I'm going to go get food. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, afternoon, evening, and of course, good night.